Bullying is not just happening here in the United States and in this country. It's also happening in other countries like in China and in the continent of Australia. Now in Australia, there's new national standards to tackle bullying in all these schools. And again, it's not just happening in the US. It's a crisis going on in Australia. Could anything be done to prevent bullying? Take a look.
Charlotte O'Brien's parents pleaded with her school to help address friendship issues before their 12-year-old took her own life in September. Their push for change has led to today, a new promise to develop an Australian standard to tackle bullying in schools.
We would work with the states and territories collaboratively to examine the kind of school procedures that are in place in different states and territories to see whether we can lift them to a higher standard across the entire country.
1 in 6 Australian students say they've been bullied, more than the US, UK, New Zealand, Ireland or Canada. Bullying is worse in the country than the cities, and worse at government schools than Catholic or independent schools.
We don't know exactly why. We know there's a scourge. We know it's common.
Anti-bullying foundations say the framework needs to be a whole school approach involving students, teachers and parents.
To understand how they can speak to their young person and also how they can speak to their school if their young person is being bullied.
Action has already been taken to help prevent bullying online, with the government introducing a world-first bill to ban under-16s from social media earlier this week.
How much more bullying can young people tolerate online? Enough is enough, and that's certainly the focus of us working with the government this week to have that legislation passed.
Bethany Yeoman, 7 News.
If you're trying to solve, if you're going to solve a problem, if there's a problem going on, you got to solve it. And, people are saying, we should ban cell phones. And like we talked about, schools are banning cell phones. Why? To prevent not only to prevent distraction to the educational process, but to prevent bullying happening in our schools. Some parents are saying, yeah, this is a great idea, while kids are sitting there saying, yeah, we understand, but how are we supposed to call our parents? Well, California 5 months ago passes the cell phone ban.
The largest school districts now join a growing effort nationwide to ban cell phones on campus. Less than 24 hours ago, the LA Unified School District passed a proposal that will prevent students from using their phone the entire school day. Board members say this will help students be more present in class. Parents, though, have more mixed reactions.
Socialize more, hung out with friends. I don't see that often anymore.
It is important for them to have a phone, especially these days now. You don't know what's going on.
The new policy will also limit social media use at school to educational purposes only. It's expected to go into effect in January.
And we'll know by then. California is one of the only school districts in this because California is one of the many school districts in this state that bans cell phones and only uses them for educational purposes. So that's good for California to do so, but other states need to hop on that bandwagon and say, we got to do the same as California. How can we do so? If we ban, what if people need to use a calculator? We had this thing called the BYOD. This was introduced 10 years ago. If you don't remember, if you've been tuning into this broadcast, I've been talking about the BYOD. Basically, it means the bring your own device policy, which basically means you can bring your cell phone, your tablet, your computer, your laptop to school and use them. When I was in school, we only had to use them 5 times: before school, during passive periods, during lunch, after school, or the teachers gives us permission. Now it's the only time you're able to take out that phone is if you're in a classroom and the teacher gives you permission to take out your phone. That's the only time you're able to do that. The only time you're able to do that is if you're in a classroom and the teacher gives you permission to take out your phone. And if this was an example right here, if we're not, we'll play for you later, then okay. But the bottom line is, the whole reason why schools are banning phones is to prevent not only distraction to the educational process, but to reduce bullying. Because that's how bullying starts. It starts in the school, and people always filming and posting it on social media. My take on this is hey, this is a good idea. I don't care what kind of opinions you got, but this is what they want. And back in the old days, if the teacher found out you had a phone and they started using it, they would take it up and you got to pay $50 to get it back. So that's my take on this. Still ahead, years ago, this man had a face. This man gets a face after a shotgun blast to the face. He now gets a new face. Lucy Guerrero explains. Up next, the story we've all been waiting for. The first ever interview with JonBenet Ramsay, with the parents of JonBenet Ramsay and the detective. A second look at that detective. Stay with us. Yesterday, I brought you the story of the documentary of the JonBenet Ramsay case. It's the case to where little JonBenet was murdered back in December 1996, and at the time, the parents were suspected of the murder, but the real killer was never found. Now there was new evidence that could really shed some light on the case and find out who killed the daughter. But the Boulder police said, nope, we're not going to do that. Stay out of my way. But since then, the question still remains, who killed little JonBenet Ramsay? Well, the fingers are being pointed at the parents, John and Patsy Ramsay. Tonight, for the very first time, you're going to get to hear their story, their side of the story. Questions were answered, including the most difficult question ever. Did John and Patsy Ramsay murder their daughter? As you'll hear from this exclusive interview from 2020, back in March 2000, you would be the judge. And if you were watching that story years ago, then you might have had a front row seat. Here's Barbara Walters.
Mr. and Mrs. Ramsay, did either of you have anything to do with the death of your daughter?
No.
No. Mr. Ramsay, did you kill JonBenet?
No, I did not.
Mrs. Ramsay, did you kill your daughter?
No, I did not kill my daughter.
How do you feel when I ask you these questions?
Insulted, pain, hurtful. How can I tell you how much I love my daughter? I love her from the depths of my being. It's just unimaginable.
Unimaginable, too, that the life of this 6-year-old could be snuffed out so suddenly and so viciously. JonBenet Ramsay was a child filled with promise.
She was a ball of fire. She could stand on her head. She could hula hoop. She was an entertainer from the word go.
She was a spark plug in our family. That's how I looked at her. She kept things alive and going.
John and Patsy Ramsay had moved to Boulder 5 years earlier from Atlanta with JonBenet and her older brother Burke. The scars of 2 recent family crises seemed to be healing. Patsy's near-fatal bout with ovarian cancer and the death of Beth Ramsay in an auto accident. She was the oldest of John Ramsay's 3 children from a previous marriage. John's software business was thriving, and to all appearances, so was the family. Until that tragic Christmas Day in 1996. John and Patsy Ramsay returned home with John Benet and her 9-year-old brother Burke after spending the evening with friends. They got back about 9 o'clock. Everything seemed normal.
We came home, went to bed. John Benet was asleep when we arrived home. We took her to bed and got Burke to bed and went to sleep.
You took a melatonin pill, so you slept soundly?
Unfortunately, I did.
There was a family vacation planned the next day. Patsy Ramsay says she got up early to get ready, threw on the clothes she'd worn the night before, and started downstairs from her third-floor bedroom at about 5:30 a.m.
And as I came to the bottom of the stairs, there were 3 pages neatly laid across one of the runs of the stairway. I turned around to start to see what it was, and realized after I read the first couple of lines.
It was a ransom note
Yes, it was.
that said,
I believe it said, listen carefully, something like, we have your daughter. And I just dashed back up the stairs as fast as I could and pushed her door open, and she wasn't in her bed.
and then?
And then I just screamed for John, screamed.
I knew from Patsy's tone of voice that something was very wrong, and I rushed downstairs and she told me there was a note, and I read it.
It was just so unbelievable. You just can't,
It's hard to grasp.
The note said, "We have your daughter in our possession." It demanded $118,000 in ransom, threatened that John Benet would be beheaded, and warned the Ramsays that they were being watched.
The note said, if you do anything, if police come, if FBI come, your daughter will die. You called 911.
Yes, I did. It would have been impossible to sit there and wait by ourselves.
You also called friends to come over. Was that wise?
Your daughter is gone.
Desperate.
She's in the hands of a madman. And you reach out for any help you can get. If I have a regret, it's I didn't get more help that morning.
The police searched your house, but they didn't find John Benet. But at one point, you went downstairs and found an open window.
Yes.
A window that you had broken yourself at one point to put your hand through and find the latch.
Right.
That window was in a storage room at the rear of the house. It was on the other end of the basement from the room in which John Benet's body would later be found.
What did you think when you saw this open window?
I was a bit alarmed, but I was more alarmed with the Samsonite suitcase that was standing up below the window.
I have seen the actual police photograph that was taken of that window and the suitcase, and there it was in full sight.
That looked wrong. That suitcase did not belong there.
It was out of place.
It's out of place.
So you thought perhaps the kidnapper had gone through that window?
That was my first impression, yes.
7 hours after the police first arrived, it was now around 1 p.m., the police asked you and a friend to search the whole house again. At that point, you opened the door to the small room. Tell me about it.
I knew instantly what I'd found. I'd found my daughter. And
What did you see?
I saw her lying on the floor with a white blanket. She was lying on a white blanket. Her hands were tied above her head. She had tape over her mouth. Her eyes were closed. I immediately knelt down over her, felt her cheek, took the tape off immediately off her mouth. I tried to untie the cord that was around her arms. I couldn't get the knot untied.
Thought she was dead. Did you scream?
I screamed. I picked her up, and I ran upstairs, and it was like a dream when you scream, but you can't say anything. All you can do is scream. That's what I did.
Yes.
I took her upstairs and laid her on the floor and still had a hope that she was alive.
I remember walking in and seeing her lying there in front of the Christmas tree. And I looked at John and he said, "She's dead." And nothing felt real. I felt like it was, my life was in slow motion and this was not really happening. I knelt down over her and just laid my body on her body and my cheek against her cheek, and it was cold. And I just kept saying, "No, no, ask God. Ask God to raise her."
John Benet's body was stiff. She had apparently been dead for hours. An intricate noose apparatus called a garrote was tightly pulled around her neck, cutting into the flesh. She had been strangled to death. An autopsy would later reveal that John Benet had also suffered a skull fracture, the result of a blow to the head, and had been sexually molested. What had begun as a kidnapping case for the police was now a brutal homicide.
The police stayed with you all that day and the following day. You felt that you were under their protection because you didn't know where this killer might have been. But it turns out that they were really scrutinizing the two of you, that you were already suspects. Did you have any idea then that you were suspects?
No,
not
at all.
It was reported also, Mr. Ramsay, that shortly after you found your daughter's body, that you called the pilot of your plane to arrange a flight to Atlanta. Is that true?
I did. We had been asked to leave the house. Within minutes of that happening, the police took the house over. We had nowhere to go. Atlanta was our home. We lived in Atlanta for 25 years. That's where our family was. We wanted to go home.
During the day that your child was found, and in the days following, Mr. Ramsay, there were reports from the police that you didn't seem distraught. You weren't sobbing. You seemed stoic. It was said you two rarely talked to each other. To them, this made it look as if you were guilty.
I've heard that, and I find that unbelievable. I've lost 2 children, and for someone to tell me that I didn't act right, I don't accept.
There is the impression that from day one, the two of you refused to cooperate with the police.
No, that is a media myth. We met with the police on the 26th. We met
and talked with them.
And talked with them for hours on the 27th. When they asked us to come to the police station, we said, yeah, we want to keep working with you, but can't you come here? We can't go out. Patsy was in bed. Patsy was barely able to move, and all we asked was they come here. They said, well, no, we have paperwork at the police station we might need to get hold of.
Okay. On the 27th, a very good friend of yours, Mike Bynum, said to you, "I think that you should hire lawyers."
Mike knew things that were going on that we didn't know. He knew that the police, by that time, were withholding John Benet's body for burial. He also, based on his experience as a prosecutor and as a district attorney, could see that the police were very quickly focusing on us as the killers.
Your lawyers advised you then not to submit to police questions. Why not? People say, wouldn't you have wanted to tell them everything?
Well, I don't recall that our lawyers told us that at the time. We were perfectly willing and anxious to work with the police to find the killer. We had a higher priority at that point, and that was to bury our daughter.
But it would, in fact, be 4 months before the Ramsays would sit down with detectives for formal interrogation. There was a mutual distrust between the Boulder Police Department and the Ramsay family.
Why didn't you take a lie detector test?
No one ever asked us
really
to take a lie detector test.
Police never asked you to take a lie detector test?
No.
I was asked during my interview with Steve Thomas hypothetical questions. One of the policemen that investigated this murder. He said, if I were to ask you to take a lie detector test, what would you say? I said, I would be offended. That's what I would say. I wasn't interested in proving my innocence at that point. That
We were
was a
frightened.
non-issue.
There's a murderer loose.
Mr. Ramsay, would you now take a lie detector
I
test?
would, certainly.
Would you, Mrs. Ramsay?
Yes, I would take a lie detector test.
When you realized that you two were the prime suspects, what did you think? What did you feel? What did you say?
Well, we were outraged. We were shocked. How could they think that?
Mr. Ramsay, the police officer that day, Linda Arndt, said on this very program that when you put your daughter's body down, you looked straight into her eyes.
His face was just inches from mine.
And Linda Arndt said she felt then from your expression that the killer was in the house and she was afraid of you.
Well, the question I would ask Linda Arndt, has she ever looked before in the eyes of a father who has just been told his 6-year-old daughter is dead, lying there on the floor in front of him? I don't know what I'd look like. I'm sure I was in agony. I'm sure I went into shock. Linda Arndt's ability to look in someone's eyes and determine they were a killer is a remarkable talent.
You just can't believe it. I mean, we're suffering from having lost our child. And then for someone to accuse you, it's just, you can't believe that that would happen.
Why did they accuse you?
I think the police looked at this situation, didn't apply a lot of logic to it, and said, child murdered in the home, the book says that parents always did it. And that became the conclusion. The tragedy of the police investigation was that it ended on December 26th.
The big question is, why did police suspect the Ramsays?
Police investigation was that it ended on December 26th.
It ended on December 26th, and it probably would have begun if the big question had not been asked. Why were they suspects? We'll have that question as Barbara Walters continues her interview when we return. Stay with us. Returning now to our story. If you were a journalist and you told your friends while at a bar, hey, guess what I'm doing? I'm going to interview John Bonet's parents. And people look at you all people look at you all shocked, going all, oh. One person will be looking shocked, while the other person says, I think they're guilty. If I was one of those friends, I'd be like, well, I wish you the best of luck. If you were one of the interviewees, what kind of questions would you ask the Ramsays? Other than, did they commit murder? Well, what is the motive? Now you're about to hear what happens when Patsy Ramsay was accused of snapping at the police. Did it happen? Once again, Barbara Walters.
Do you understand why it is that so many people still think you are guilty?
I understand that they've been told that by the media for 3 long years. I'm amazed that the whole world doesn't think we're guilty, based on what they've been told.
Let me go through some of the major reasons why people feel you are guilty. The beauty pageants. If we had only seen pictures of John Bonet in little jeans and a t-shirt, there might not have been the same feeling. But what we saw in still photographs and in videos was a child dressed like an adult, very suggestive in many of these pictures. Lipstick, mascara, moving around on the stage on these beauty pageants. To many people, this looks perverted. Therefore, there's got to be something wrong here.
There is something wrong here if someone thinks that looks perverted. Jean Bonnet was an entertainer. She would entertain at the drop of a hat. Little girls dress up and play dress up.
You yourself had entered beauty contests.
Yes.
I'm a junior at West Virginia University.
So this was, what, fun for you both
It
to
was
have
the
to do this?
most wonderful time of my life. It's not unlike a father who enjoyed playing baseball as a child. He wants to impart that same love of the game with his son or daughter. There's just absolutely nothing wrong with it.
They called John Bonet a 6-year-old Lolita, a pun-sized sex kitten.
The people that look at these things and see something perverted. That didn't come from JonBenet. That's coming from the viewer, not the child.
So let me go through what the motives are. Motive number one. You are guilty, Mr. Ramsay, because there was some evidence that your daughter had been sexually molested.
I know, as best I can know, as a father who was with his daughter every day that I was home, she was not sexually abused or molested before December 26th.
Okay, but on December 26th, there are some indications that your daughter was sexually molested.
Well,
Therefore, here's the motive. You were doing it. Maybe you'd done it before. Maybe you just did it that night. Perhaps your wife discovered you. Whatever it was, JonBenet cried out. You killed her.
Well, that's fits right in the category of it could have been done by an alien as well. It makes no sense. There's no history. A person doesn't go throughout their lives as a normal human being, one night turn into a monster, slaughter their daughter, go to bed, and get up and act normal from there on. That doesn't happen. In these kinds of cases, virtually all of them, I suspect, where there is child abuse in a family, there's a long history. And that's not the case in our family.
I have to point out that JonBenet's pediatrician, who had been her pediatrician from birth, has publicly said that he never saw any evidence of sexual molestation. There never have been reports from her school, and yet there is the suspicion.
I would have given my life for JonBenet in an instant. I was sorry that I couldn't have done it that night. To be accused of harming my child in any way is beyond comprehension.
This was a very brutal murder, and yet some of the authorities have said that you staged this, that you loosely tied your daughter's hands, that you put the noose, the garrote, to make it look as if some terrible person had done this, that this whole picture was staged.
Well, that's absurd. This was done by a terrible person. The garrote was deeply embedded in JonBenet's throat. Her hands were tightly bound. I couldn't get the knot untied. I tried to get it untied even before I brought her upstairs. The fundamental issue is no logic has been applied to any of this case. Why would I, for example, have staged this horrible scene and then disturbed it myself, pulled the tape off her mouth, carried her upstairs, tried to untie the hands before I brought her upstairs? If I'd have staged it, I would have wanted the police to see it as I staged it. It's not logical. Makes no sense.
Let me give the motive that is ascribed to you, Mrs. Ramsay. Okay. Was bedwetting a source of tension in your house?
Absolutely not. All children have accidents.
The motive is that JonBenet wet her bed, and that you got angry, you lost it, you snapped, you killed her, perhaps accidentally. You were downstairs, maybe she came down, she said, "Mommy, I wet my bed." You said, "Again, JonBenet," and you either pushed her or you hit her, you were exhausted, you were furious, you did it.
First of all, we know from the evidence that this was a premeditated murder. The way in which she died, the garrote that was around her neck,
you could have done it. You could have gotten nervous, and afterwards you could have done it. You could have awakened your husband and said, "I did this terrible thing, John, and now we have to stage this." No, people have said this.
Of course they've said it.
But would you have a child, would you get up in the middle of the night and slaughter your child? We're parents, we love our children.
But
No.
what do you say when people say you just snapped? I mean, whatever it was, something went wrong, you did this terrible thing, John then helped you, you staged this whole thing,
It's nonsense.
maybe you don't even know that she did it.
That's impossible. I mean, it's absurd.
I'm asking the questions you know.
I know.
People have said these are the two major motives. Either you sexually molested her or you snapped because primarily
Let me tell you something. I'm a cancer survivor of stage 4 cancer. John has lost a child in an automobile accident. That completely changes your outlook. When you are standing on the brink of death with a terminal illness, your priorities suddenly line up in a row, and you know exactly what the important things are in life, and bedwetting is totally insignificant. I love my children. I wouldn't harm them for anything in the world. Now, I don't know how you answer someone that continually accuses you of some absurd notion.
Did either of you for a moment suspect each other?
No,
Not for
absolutely
a
not
minute.
for a microsecond.
Tom Haney, who was the homicide detective from Denver, asked me that very question in my 3-day interrogation. After 3 days of listening to him hammer me, I said, don't even go there. If I thought for one moment that JonBenet Ramsay was murdered by her father, we wouldn't be having this interview right now.
3 other family suspects were cleared by the police investigation. 9-year-old Burke Ramsay did not have the strength police believe the murder required, or the ability to write the ransom note. John Ramsay's older son and daughter were not in Colorado that night. The police continued to focus on the parents.
Another major factor, the ransom note. The ransom note was written on a pad and a pen from your home. And the question is, if the intruder was planning to write a note, why wouldn't he or she have brought their own pad and paper?
They knew that the less they brought in the house, the better.
But they planned to write a note?
Apparently.
Before or after the crime?
I think the note was written before the crime was committed.
What has thrown great suspicion on you, Mrs. Ramsay, as you know, is that some handwriting experts have said that there's a similarity between the writing on this note and your handwriting. This has been inconclusive, but the similarity of the handwriting is the strongest piece of evidence implicating you.
Well, if that's the strongest, then there's not much of a case, because we have had handwriting experts to look at my handwriting as well. And on a scale, I believe, of 1 to 5, with 5 being a totally incomplete match, I was rated at a 4.5. So there's very little.
In fact, law enforcement sources in Boulder, Colorado, told me that media reports of similarities between Mrs. Ramsay's handwriting and the ransom note are, quote, grossly exaggerated.
One of the questions is, what reason would a kidnapper have for leaving behind both the ransom letter and the body?
I hope to ask the killer that someday, face to face. We believe that this was a kidnapping, originally, that went bad. Now this person, this creature, his mind doesn't work like ours. It's boiling. So whatever was going through this creature's mind, we can't logically analyze and explain.
Another indicator of your possible guilt to the police and the FBI is time. It said that only you two had the time and the opportunity to commit the murder, use the noose, this garrote, carry the child downstairs, write a 2.5-page ransom note without the fear of being detected. If it were an intruder, this intruder would be afraid that you would wake up, that Burke would wake up. And yet, all this time, this takes time.
We believe that this killer came into our home while we were gone, waited, was there when we returned.
Waited hours.
Waited hours. Had plenty of time to write a ransom note.
When you were asleep.
When we were asleep, or perhaps before we even came home.
We would have been gone for 3 to 4 hours. That is plenty, ample time to find their way and learn their way around the house.
And be in the house when you returned?
Yes.
Does it sound possible that a killer would sit for hours and hours in your house?
That house was so rambling. There were so many hiding places.
Really?
He could be hidden for a week and we wouldn't find him.
The intruder theory is the major point of debate in the Ramsay case. One of the mysteries cited in newspaper stories was a lack of footprints outside the house. There was snow, but no footprints in the snow, the story said. Therefore, no intruder. But these actual police crime scene photographs taken early that morning before John Bonet's body was discovered, show only scattered patches of snow around the house and clear paths to windows and doors. But mysteries abound in this case.
When John Bonet's body was found, there was one of her favorite nightgowns next to her so-called Barbie nightgown. And so there was the impression that whoever did this cared about this child, left the nightgown, left the blanket. Again, her parents did it, but they loved her, so they tried to comfort her even in death.
That's a very strange, that nightgown should not have been there. It's a clue of some type, we don't know what. Like, we know several very positive facts about this killer, we believe. It's a male, it's a pedophile that looks at young female children much differently than you and I do. They look at them with sexual eyes. I've thought about it every day for 3 years. I've talked to experts. I've talked to experienced homicide detectives. It's the best profile we can come up with.
So, could there have been an intruder? Coming up, a mysterious shoe print.
It's the best profile we can come up with.
The best profile to come up with. But was there an intruder? Could there ever be an intruder that would have seen what happened? Coming up, the shoe print, the footprint shoe that could even match DNA. Stay with us. Returning to our story. So far, what you heard is all the sides of the tale from the Ramsay case, from the Ramsay parents. But the question is, if not the Ramsays, then who else could have committed the murder? You may remember the top police detectives back in 1998 who investigated the case quit in protest. One of them you're about to meet right now. Again, Barbara Walters.
Lou Smith is probably the most experienced homicide detective in Colorado. He was brought into the Ramsay case by the district attorney after the DA's office lost confidence in the Boulder Police Department. Smith developed his own theory of the case that widened the gap with the police department. He became convinced that a stun gun, like this one, was used on John Bonet. A stun gun delivers an electric shock that incapacitates the victim. Smith noticed marks, reproduced in the sketch, on the autopsy photographs of John Bonet's body. The autopsy report referred to them simply as abrasions, but they reminded Smith of a previous stun gun case. There were 2 sets of marks on John Bonet's body, and when Smith calibrated their measurements, he felt they matched up with this popular stun gun model, the air taser. He felt the stun gun was used, and that's what kept John Bonet quiet, but there is no proof of that.
Well, I have not heard any expert disagree with that theory.
Well, some of the police do not think there was a stun gun.
I don't consider Boulder police experts in homicides. That's one of the problems we've been dealing with.
The police don't like that theory because it doesn't match up with the parents did it. If the parents wanted to bring their child to a basement quietly, they wouldn't have to use a stun gun. They could just say, "Come on, we're going to go to the basement for a surprise or something." You know, that doesn't fit their theory that John or I were involved.
Why wasn't the body exhumed?
Don't know why the police didn't consider that. We were asked when this theory first surfaced about a stun gun that if the body were exhumed, it could be proved conclusively, but it had to be done fairly quickly. This was within months of when we just buried John Bonet. And I, as her father, could not bring myself to do that. I had laid my child to rest. She was at peace. And that was a decision that I couldn't make.
Even though it might have cleared you?
That was not the priority. The priority was my child was at rest.
Let me talk about some of the evidence that some people may not know about. DNA was found under John Bonet's fingernails and also on her panties. This DNA does not match yours, your sons, any member of your family, or indeed anyone whom the police have questioned. And there was a palm print on the door of that room in which John Bonet was found. That print matches no one that anyone has tested, and there is a visible shoe print with the name High Tech clearly visible in the room in which your daughter was found. The police have not been able to match this print, this shoe, this DNA to anyone.
That's correct. And that's what gives us hope that we could find the killer.
You think that's what shows that you're innocent?
I think that will lead us to the killer. I don't accept that as proof that we're innocent. Our objective is to find the killer. That's the only way we will prove our innocence, sadly.
Do you think the murderer is someone you know?
I don't know that I knew this person or not. I hope I don't.
I can't believe that we have ever knowingly met anyone that can be this vicious. But someone killed our daughter. So we have to start looking. We start at the inner circle and keep moving out.
The Ramsays start with the inner circle because they say the murderer was familiar with their family, perhaps even to the point of knowing that John Ramsay's year-end bonus was $118,000, the amount demanded in the ransom note. In their book, the Ramsays suggest that the police look harder at a handful of suspects who had dealings with the family. But high-ranking law enforcement authorities in Boulder tell me that all of the people on the Ramsays list have been, quote, thoroughly investigated and are not currently under suspicion, unquote.
If the murderer was a pedophile, a sexual predator, do you ever reproach yourself for letting John Bonet appear so publicly in pageants and parades where she could have been seen?
Well, I think that is probably one thing that I, if had to do over again, would be much more cautious about.
There's no question we were naive. We were ignorant of the fact that there were evil people in the world.
The Ramsays lost their naivete and their privacy overnight. Reporters clamored for comment, and the fact that there was no comment didn't stop the tabloids. The supermarket press hounded them to the point of libel, they said, infiltrating their neighborhood, their church, even their cemetery.
We've been under siege for almost 3 years. Hidden cameras were planted at the gravesite. Hidden video cameras. People would call on us under false pretense and say they were someone they weren't.
How did you get through all of this? The reports, the constant television.
Barbara, I have lost the most precious thing in the world to me. I've lost my child, my little girl, Jean Bonet. I have been as low as you humanly can go. You can kick me when I'm down, but you can't take me any lower, because I'm hurt as badly as I can be hurt.
Do you dream about John Bonet?
Yes, I do.
What do you dream?
I dream, my dreams are so vivid that I feel like I've spent the whole night with her. And when I wake up in the morning, then I realize that the day is the nightmare, because I've had such a wonderful, lovely time with Jean Bonet all night long.
What has this done to your marriage?
I think it strengthened our love for each other.
I can't imagine what I would do without John to lean on.
Did either of you ever consider suicide?
I have to admit that yes, I did.
You did too?
Yes. But we have other children. They need us now more than ever. So we have to be strong for them. That's the only reason that we have to go on.
You were carrying something when you came in here.
Just a little glove.
I mean, you did not ask to show this, I have to point out. I saw you walking in carrying something. This is a glove that was John Bonet's?
Yes.
Do you carry this all the time?
I usually have something of hers with me all the time. I found this just recently when I had opened some boxes for the first time that I hadn't seen since we left Colorado. And, to think that her little hand was in this glove, and there's a little spot here where she obviously spilled something, and it makes me sad that that, you know, there were happy little hands in this club. Now they're gone.
Can you kiss me? It's okay. It's okay. Germany's okay. She's with us.
Grieving parents still under suspicion. In 1998, a grand jury began to consider all the evidence. And during those months, John and Patsy Ramsay swore their innocence, but prepared for the worst.
But were they prepared for the worst when the grand jury began? When we come back, we'll have the conclusion to this interview, and later on, and when we come back, the conclusion to the story, and what will happen now to the parents. Please stay with us. And now the conclusion to our story. The Ramsays insist they're innocent, but the grand jury had other plans put in place. Now remember, they were the prime suspects in that murder. What's going to be next for the Ramsays? And what if a father's grieve what would John Ramsay say when a father's grieve turns to anger? Here with the conclusion of our story, Barbara Walters.
For more than a year, a Boulder grand jury heard testimony and considered evidence in the murder of John Benet Ramsay. Its term and budget were extended to allow for more investigation. The Ramsays were holding their breath. Did you think that you were going to be indicted?
We certainly hope not, but we were fully prepared mentally to be indicted and to face a trial. We were prepared to drive to the sheriff's office, turn ourselves in, and be jailed. Burke was with friends. I had signed a custodial agreement that would put Burke in the custody of my brother.
We had to prepare in the event the worst happened.
The worst did not happen. On October 13th, 1999, the grand jury finished its work, and the district attorney announced that there was insufficient evidence to indict anyone in the murder of John Benet. Even after the grand jury did not indict you, many still question your innocence. Let me show you a piece of tape, Mr. and Mrs. Ramsay. This is the Colorado Governor, Bill Owens, October 27th, 1999, after the grand jury issued no indictment.
If I could speak to John and Patsy Ramsay, I'd tell them to quit hiding behind their attorneys, quit hiding behind their PR firm, come back to Colorado, work with us to find the killers in this case, no matter where that trail may lead.
What do you say to the governor?
Governor Owens did what should happen to no one in a civilized society. As the chief of his state, he held up his finger, tested the political winds, discarded 13 months of grand jury work, and for political gain said, "Oh, don't worry, we're going to get him." I would say to Governor Owens, I asked to meet with you before the grand jury was over. I asked to meet with you after the grand jury was over. You've spent 3 years investigating my family. What are you going to do to find the killer of my daughter?
The Boulder police would like this to go away. They would like to just close the books on it, pretend that none of it ever happened. But we are not going away. We are going to be their worst nightmare. Patsy and John Ramsay are hanging in there. Until the day we die, we'll be looking for the person that murdered our daughter.
Mr. and Mrs. Ramsay, again and again in your book, you talk about your faith in God.
If it weren't for our faith, there would be no hope of ever seeing John Benet again. But we know that we will see her again in heaven.
You think that John Benet is in a better place?
I would have liked to think that my arms were the best place for John Benet to be. But she's in a place where I hope to be one day. I know I'll be there.
As wide-ranging as this interview was, we obviously weren't able to cover every aspect of the case. The Ramsays go into greater detail in their book, The Death of Innocence. If you have further questions, you may find answers on our website at abcnews.com, or you can actually question the Ramsays yourself, because they will be available online this coming Monday at 10 p.m. Eastern Time, again at abcnews.com. As to the status of the case, Boulder Police and the District Attorney's Office tell me the investigation continues, but primarily part-time. And they say the Ramsays are still, and I quote, under the umbrella of suspicion. In the meantime, John and Patsy Ramsay continue to fund their own investigation. They say they won't consider the case closed until the killer is found. We'll be right back.
Until the killer is found. Now, here's what we know so far. We know that Patsy Ramsay died in 2006. We know that John Ramsay is still looking for the killer. We know there's a new documentary out that could really help out with the case, which it did for the Menendez brothers. We also know that new suspects are coming in. But the question is it which suspect did kill this little girl? It's about to be 30 years since this little child has just been murdered. And if I was one of the killers, I would fess up and say, yes, I did. I duct taped the face, this, that, the third. I tased her, this, that, and the third. I mean, if I was in the killer's shoes, the killer's assistant, I mean, I would have gladly just walked out, snuck out the window. I wouldn't take a video of it going all. And then just ran out saying, got you, bitch. And then when the time was right, came back, saw the body, saw the note, ran back to the ranch and said, hey, I was one of the assistants that did not participate. I didn't touch your daughter. I do have tape of who the killer is. I would have given them tape. The evidence would have been played in front of that grand jury. I would have sat in front of that grand jury and say, yes, I saw this person did it. I saw my own eyes. I have the videotape. I have the evidence. Play it for the jury. And then they would have found out who the real killer was. I would have found out his name. I would have called him and saying, hey, you know, they're on to you. You need to turn yourself in. And the mystery would have been solved, and you know, this case would go away. And it would have. When we come back, one person who shot him, you're going to hear the story about a person who shot himself in the face. Yeah. When we come back, one person shot himself in the face years ago, and now years later, he's going to go into plastic surgery just to fix his face after all the scars. And luckily, he survived. I mean, so how can you shoot yourself in the face, survive, and then even go through plastic surgery to get in your face because you don't like the face that you look? Take a little break. We'll be back right after this. Stay with us. Now for a story that for the very first time could really move your stomach, that could really touch your heart. And for the very first time ever on Give Me a Break, it's one of the greatest stories ever that could really mark this 8th season of Give Me a Break. In all the years we've done broadcasts like this, we've never shown you a story unlike any other. You're about to meet a man who had a face transplant for years after he shot himself in the face. You heard correctly. He shot himself in the face. You'll probably know why once you hear his story. But then after all those years, doctors told him they couldn't build a new face. But now, for the very first time, you're going to be seeing his face, the new and improved face, as he gets a new look with a face transplant. Here's Lisa Guerrero with his story.
Team Derek Koch seemed to have it all.
He was an all-star high school running back with handsome good looks. Then tragedy struck.
I fully thought he was going to die.
10 years ago, Derek put a shotgun to his head and pulled the trigger. Somehow he survived, but was left with devastating injuries. After 58 initial operations, doctors in Michigan finally said they had done all they could.
We said, Lisa, there's nothing more I can do for Derek. There's nothing more I can do for him. This was it. And I just instantly just started bawling.
The only option left, a full face transplant, an incredibly risky procedure that requires a matching donor, something that can take years to find.
One of the most important things in facial transplantation and in Derek's story is the donor and the generosity of the donor family, and then them allowing Derek to receive this amazing gift. They made the decision to help a patient, and that is something that I think is remarkable and admirable and incredibly difficult.
4 long years ticked by before they got the call this February.
The call comes and you're like, oh my gosh, this might be happening.
Derek and his family traveled from their home in Michigan to the renowned Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota. It took a team of 80 to assist Dr. Samir Mardini, who led the transplant surgery.
In Derek's case, he's missing so many parts of his face. We're thinking probably about 85% of his face. And you're just doing everything you can to get Derek back to having the face he had before the injury.
The complex operation took over 50 hours.
My heart was pounding. I mean, I was squeezing my husband's hand so tight. I was excited, I was nervous, I was scared. I had so many emotions going through me.
And this is the moment, exactly 10 years to the day from his accident, that Derek got to see his new face. Tell me about that moment.
It's the first time I've seen him with a nose and with lips and a profile. It was life-changing.
7 months later, I was there with his mom to see Derek's amazing transformation.
Derek, hi. Nice meeting you. I'm Lisa Guerrero.
He sat down with me to talk about his incredible journey.
Wow. Look how handsome you are. When you look in the mirror now, Derek, what do you see?
I have a face, a nose, teeth, lips I can close.
You've been given this incredible second chance. What are you going to be doing with the rest of your life, Derek?
I want to go out and share my story and help others any way I can, whether it's just talking to them or just listening to them. If they need someone to talk to, I'll be there.
What a remarkable story. There's also a GoFundMe page to where Derek has set up to help the road to recovery, which you can access, which we'll give it to you in the link in the description below. And so far, since this story entered Inside Edition, over $280,000 has been raised. The goal is to $1 million. If you want to help Derek fund his transplant, we'll put the link in the description below. So that way you can help. So that way you can help out people with who are in dire need of surgeries like this. This, and I'll tell you, this was a remarkable, this has been a remarkable story. In all the 8 years we've done this broadcast, we have never shown a story to where a person would shoot himself in the face, survive, and then get a new face. I mean, shot in the head, sorry. He shot himself in the head, survived, and then get a new face. Wow. What a remarkable story. Coming up on Give Me Break Monday, the look inside of Menendez's case And next week on our second look, the story of one of the police detectives that she's speaking out with Elizabeth Vargas. And also coming up on Monday, one of the detectives spoke out to Elizabeth Vargas 2 years before the Ramsay parents interviewed Barbara Walters. And also come up on a short Gimmick Sunday, what you need to know look at that. One more about the Menendez case on Monday. Alright, now on to our funny videos. Alright. During the show, do you remember Angry Grandpa? Charles Green? This year is going to mark over 5 years since he passed away. And since that time, many people turned to his cooking videos. And tonight's Fire Break, we're going to show you one of his famous recipes that he cooked. So one of his famous recipes, the biggest ever, with 2 million views, is the Extreme Hot Dogs. Take a look at this one.
Okay, Pop, what are you doing?
Today. Epic hot dogs with bacon. You take your damn. This shit's good, I ain't lying.
Okay, so I'm guessing the first step is you get a Nathan.
Yes.
Nathan?
Nathan Hill.
What the?
Wait a minute, wait.
What is that? Ain't Nathan.
Hey. Carolina Pride. Ha ha. Wieners. Anyway, you make your goddamn chili. I made that this morning.
Now you gotta tell people what it's made out of because they don't think you use the can.
I ain't gonna tell them. Try it. Oh, you burned me. Try that shit. That homemade chili. Ain't no goddamn Texas beef fucking chili there. That grandpa chili. Anyway, you lay out your bacon. You put your hot dog in there. You start blowing that motherfucker.
You left the cheese out.
I need the cheese right there.
Yeah, tell them though.
Oh, you gotta put the cheese in there. See, more the better, man. God damn. Look at that motherfucker. Look at that motherfucker. You just put it in there, right? Got one wiener left. Anybody want my wiener? You want my wiener?
I reckon I'll take a block of this cheese.
You can have it all. I'm through with it. Anyway, you get this shit all wrapped up like that, man. And you come up with that right there. Alright? And then we got down on 350.
Oh, you already got one ready or something? Or?
Ah, you cheat. I said I got the goddamn mouth on you, asshole!
That was like a cookie.
You gonna help me with this? You gonna run your mouth?
I'll help.
It's Grandpa. Anyway. Get you in there, goddamn chili! No hungry.
Give me some of that.
You good hell, you took my goddamn chili, princess. Anyway.
Try chili, Bridget?
That bitch will eat anything. I bet she'd set chrome off a goddamn trailer hitch.
Okay, you were disgusting.
I meant to be. What the fuck you want? Now invite you into my goddamn grandpa's kitchen. Get out of here. That's your mouth number, your number of legitimate children, or your fucking age. Anyway, I'll bring y'all back when I get ready to take them out to the oven. You move. That'll go too. We got them going, right? Anything I'm in for, they fucking done.
It's alright.
Look good, don't they?
Yeah, they do.
They're almost ready.
Fucking things are popping up there. Grace can catch a fire.
They're almost ready. Move. About another 10 minutes. Man,
Time to come out.
I'm looking right now. Oh. Yeah. And there your hot dog. With cheese. Now I'm gonna let these suckers cool off a minute. And we come back.
Oh my god, is that not burning the shit out of you right now?
You wanna see it burn something?
Yeah.
God, what is that? Anyway. Good? God damn, how can it not be? Now you gonna take your beyond. And you open that old butt out, man. Then get to the pork over here. And get some of that cheese, man, over there. How you want your hot dog done, Michael?
This is yours. I don't want it. I don't want it right now. Fuck that, too hot.
We'll give it now. That bitch leaving anything. Tina, you want chili on your dog? Alright. What onion you want?
Give me a little bit of meat.
What?
Nothing. You want ketchup?
Thank you.
You want some honey mustard?
Yeah.
This is the angry grandpa.
Oh, goddamn!
Put your thumb to the damn thing.
Goddamn piece of fucking. Must come from Japan. Oh, goddamn. Honey mustard. Keep Bridget out of here, man. She ain't beating her. Dan? Hang on, grab that.
Are they done?
Yep.
Ooh, good call. Hey, Dina. Bring your fat ass all over here. Damn. An angry grandpa bacon hot dog with onion. I'll take the first bite. Say something! Those ninjas are gawking at the motherfucker, say something!
I gotta say something with food in my mouth.
I did. Never stopped before.
What's the verdict, Ma?
It's really good.
Thank you. Can I have cooking with Grandpa?
You just tell them at the fair.
You suck my dick. Grandpa hot dogs. Y'all try 'em.
Sound like that. You shut my dick. That's kind of funny.
What's the verdict, Ma?
It's really good.
Thank you. Can I have cooking with Grandpa?
Listen.
You just tell them at the fair.
You suck my dick. Grandpa hot dogs. Y'all try 'em.
Son of a bitch. Shut my dick. Too million views and really. Wow. I'll see you back here Monday night. For all of us here at YouTube, Give Break, stop, point, speak up, concentration, not strength, no jaywalking. That's all visitors Give Break Saturday going to Sunday. I'll see you again Monday. Have a good night.